Stop staring at the PlayStation Store for hours just to play nothing. I took the bullet for you, sifting through the garbage and the painfully mediocre filler. Honestly, these 15 PS5 titles are the only ones actually worth your storage space right now. Imagine finding out everything you write instantly turns into reality. Sounds like a superpower, right? Except Alan Wake is stuck writing a survival horror script where everything actively wants him dead. Remedy Entertainment essentially built a playable psychological fever dream here. You are splitting your playtime between two completely different perspectives. On one hand, you've got Saga Anderson, an FBI profiler digging into some incredibly grim, ritualistic murders in the Pacific Northwest. Piecing together clues on her physical murder board inside her mind place is just ridiculously satisfying. Then you have Alan, who is trapped in the shifting, neon-drenched nightmare called the Dark Place. Visually, the Northlight engine is absolutely flexing. The lighting is oppressive, and the combat feels super heavy and desperate. You have to literally burn away enemy shields with your flashlight before your bullets even register. But the absolute wildest mechanic is how Alan can rewrite reality. You change a plot point on his typewriter, and the actual level geometry violently morphs around you in real time to match the new story. If you want suffocating atmospheric dread instead of cheap jump scares, this is mandatory playing. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 completely blindsided everyone. The setup is pure existential dread. You're dropped into this gorgeous, surreal world where a godlike entity called the Paintress wakes up once a year to paint a number. Every single person that age or older instantly dissolves into dust. This year, she painted 33. You play as a doomed squad racing to kill her before she lowers the number again. Mechanically, it looks like a traditional turn-based RPG, but it features an active time reaction system. Think of the timing mechanics from Paper Mario or Sea of Stars, but slapped into a hyper-realistic, stunning Unreal Engine 5 setting. You actually have to read enemy attack animations, execute perfect parries, and nail your button prompts to maximize damage. You absolutely cannot just put the controller down and zone out during encounters. The art direction is completely unhinged, blending these massive painterly landscapes with grotesque boss designs that look like rejected museum exhibits. Plus, the party dynamic hits so hard because you know these people are literally on a ticking clock. It is a massive breath of fresh air for the genre. Insomniac already had the superhero formula figured out, but Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is just a ridiculous flex of the PS5's hardware. Having both Peter and Miles active in the open world is incredible, and instantly hot-swapping between them with zero loading screens is actual magic. The traversal momentum is completely off the charts this time around. You are effortlessly chaining standard pendulum web swings directly into the new web wings, catching wind slipstreams to basically slingshot yourself across the East River in seconds. You will straight up ignore the fast travel system because hitting that traversal flow state is just too addictive. Mechanically, the combat loop forces you to be way more aggressive. They integrated a dedicated parry system to handle Kraven's heavier enemies, and when Peter finally gets the symbiote suit, his crowd control becomes devastating. You can physically feel the brutal, heavy impact of those tendril slams right through the controller's haptics. Narratively, the campaign goes to some incredibly dark places once Venom enters the picture, and Yuri Lowenthal's performance of Fickerructed Peter Parker carries immense emotional weight. If you own a PlayStation 5, this is mandatory hardware testing. Monster Hunter Wilds is pure, unfiltered dopamine. The core loop is exactly what you want. You spot a terrifying apex predator that could easily level a city block, and instead of running, you pull out a weapon the size of a refrigerator to go break its face. Capcom essentially took the seamless ecosystems of World and cranked the scale to absolute maximum. The map completely ditches the static arena design. We are talking severe, dynamic weather shifts that fundamentally alter the geography and the actual AI routines of the monsters. A massive sandstorm might roll in, and suddenly a completely different, hyper-aggressive Leviathan digs out of the dunes to ambush you. You still have all 14 weapon types, and the combat haptics feel incredibly weighty. Landing a true charge slash with the greatsword gives you that ridiculously satisfying meaty hit stop that triggers the reward center of your brain. Or you can literally buff your 4-player hunting party by duding on the hunting horn while dodging lightning strikes. The environment actually feels alive. Monsters get into brutal turf wars over territory, and endemic life panics when the big threats show up. You are hunting walking natural disasters, and it is glorious. Let me be completely real with you. Elden Ring is going to absolutely humiliate you. It'll break your spirit, punish your greed, and then somehow physically compel you to attempt Margit for the 47th time at 2 a.m. Because this is from software, dying is baked directly into the gameplay loop. You are going to see that red text a lot. But the dopamine hit when everything finally clicks is unmatched. You stop panic rolling, you actually memorize the boss telegraphs, you abuse your iframes, and you finally break their poise for that incredibly satisfying critical hit. That feeling is honestly better than winning the Super Bowl. The map design is an absolute masterclass in player freedom. You think you're just exploring a random forest, then you step on a random elevator, and suddenly you are riding down into a massive starry underground cosmos like Seal for River. You could easily dump 150 hours into the lands between and still completely miss an entire legacy dungeon. George R. R. Martin laid the mythological groundwork here, so expect incredibly dense lore hidden entirely in item descriptions and obscure NPC quest lines where absolutely everybody meets a tragic, miserable end. Mechanically, the build variety is absurd. You can power stance colossal greatswords, abuse heavy jump attacks, or just melt health bars from across the arena with Comet Azor. Throw in the brutally difficult Shadow of the Erdtree expansion, and the sheer volume of content is staggering. Elden Ring easily stands as a massive achievement on the PS5, and honestly, one of the greatest titles ever printed to a disc. So remember those old tabletop campaigns where the dungeon master actually let you get away with the most unhinged, game-breaking ideas? Larian Studios somehow coded that exact feeling into a massive video game. Baldur's Gate 3 is a ridiculous achievement in absolute player agency. You roll up a custom character, maybe a desperately evil Dark Urge sorcerer, or a ridiculously charismatic bard, and the game just drops you into Faerun and says, "Good luck, try not to explode." The combat runs what a heavily modified D&D 5th edition rule set, and the tactical depth is insane. It plays out like this beautifully chaotic turn-based sandbox. You aren't just spamming basic attacks to whittle down a health bar, you are breaking line of sight, dipping your arrows in nearby surface hazards, or using a simple shove bonus action to yeet a massive goblin boss straight off a chasm. The physics engine is so polished that half the time, abusing the environment is your best weapon. And we have to talk about the party members. The performance capture brings an absurd level of life to these characters. They are deeply flawed, incredibly well written, and they will heavily judge every single dialogue check you make. They will romance you, violently betray you, or permanently pack up and leave your camp if your moral compass doesn't align with theirs. The sheer reactivity of the world state based on your raw dice rolls is staggering. Larian basically looked at the entire CRPG genre, completely raised the bar for cinematic storytelling, and delivered an undeniable masterpiece. Kratos is back, and the guy is somehow still the most stressed out dad in all of gaming. But underneath the brutal execution animations and the sheer haptic feedback of burying an axe into a monster's skull, Ragnarok is hiding a profoundly heavy narrative. You are basically watching a father desperately try to outrun a mythological prophecy he knows he can't escape. Atreus is older now, constantly pushing boundaries and demanding answers, and that raw familial tension completely anchors the pacing of the first 20 hours. The facial capture and dialogue writing here are genuinely industry-leading. Mechanically, Santa Monica Studio took the 2018 combat loop and just injected it with absolute adrenaline. You start with the Leviathan Axe and the Blades of Chaos fully unlocked, and seamlessly hot-swapping between them mid-combo is pure dopamine. You can freeze an enemy solid with a heavy cleave, animation cancel into a fiery blade grapple, and yank yourself across the arena without dropping your combo multiplier. And without spoiling anything, you get another tool later in the campaign that completely breaks the enemy stun meter meta wide open. The boss encounters are a massive step up too. There is a specific cinematic clash early on that physically destroys the surrounding level geometry in real time, and it is easily one of the greatest spectacles ever rendered on a console. Plus, you actually get to explore all 9 realms this time. The biomes are incredibly diverse, and the optional side areas, specifically the crater in Vanaheim, are so dense and well-designed they feel like standalone expansion packs. If you own a PS5, skipping this is honestly a crime. I need you to hear me out because this is going to sound completely unhinged. Astro Bot, yes, the adorable little mascot platformer, is straight up one of the greatest video games currently sitting on the PlayStation 5. I am absolutely serious. Team Asobi essentially looked at their launch tech demo and went completely supernova. The sheer volume of mechanical variety here is absurd. You are getting pure, unfiltered Nintendo tier level design. Most AAA developers would stretch one of these power-ups into an entire 12-hour campaign, but Asobi just hands you a mechanic where you turn into a giant sponge to soak up water, lets you mess with the ridiculously impressive fluid physics for 5 minutes, and immediately pivots to something else. And we have to talk about the hardware integration, because the haptic feedback is actual witchcraft. You physically feel the difference in the controller's micro vibrations when your metal feet transition from walking on thick glass to trudging through muddy sand. The adaptive triggers give you literal physical resistance when you pull a physics-based rope. Then you have the VIP rescue bots. We are talking incredibly deep cuts into Sony's history, where entire stages morph their core gameplay loop to perfectly mimic franchises like Ape Escape or God of War, right down to the custom animations. It is pure dopamine. It proves a masterpiece doesn't need a brooding cinematic narrative. Buy this immediately. The team behind Persona 5 decided to completely ditch modern-day Tokyo, and what we got is one of the most mechanically dense fantasy RPGs ever made. Metaphor ReFantazio drops you into the kingdom of Uchronia right after the king is assassinated. But instead of a standard royal succession, the throne is decided by a literal magic-fueled democratic election. You are basically running a high-stakes political campaign wrapped in a hardcore anime aesthetic. The gameplay loop is absolute genius because Atlas finally fixed the pacing issue of traditional JRPGs. If you are overleveled, you literally just hack and slash weaker mobs right there in the overworld in real time. Instant wipe, zero transition screen, grab your loot, and keep moving. But when you hit an elite enemy or a boss, it seamlessly drops you into that classic brutally punishing press-turn combat system. You get this wild class system called archetypes, which are essentially equipable job nodes that let you min-max your party's skill inheritance to a frankly absurd degree. The world building goes incredibly hard on themes of systemic prejudice and class divide, where your social standing is entirely dictated by your tribe. And the presentation is just ridiculous. The UI design alone belongs in an art museum, taking that signature Atlas flair and splashing it across this gorgeous, painterly medieval canvas. The enemy designs are genuinely unsettling, heavily inspired by bizarre Renaissance art. If you have even a passing interest in Persona, this is mandatory. Atlas genuinely does not miss. Touching the original 2005 Resident Evil 4 is basically gaming sacrilege. It literally defined the modern third-person shooter, so Capcom rebuilding it from scratch in the RE engine was a massive gamble that somehow paid off flawlessly. You step back into the tactical boots of Leon Kennedy, dropping into a miserable, muddy Spanish village to rescue the president's daughter from the Las Plagas cult. They kept that legendary B-movie charm, but heavily cranked up the raw survival horror dread. The combat loop is an absolute masterclass in aggressive crowd control. You are never actually safe. The Ganado AI is terrifyingly smart now. They will actively coordinate to flank you, physically duck under your laser sight, and throw pitchforks to break your movement. But the absolute biggest mechanical game changer is the new knife parry. Your blade has durability, but timing a perfect block lets you deflect almost anything, including a wildly revving chainsaw right to the face. It completely transforms the close quarters meta. You are constantly sweating over your attachate case grid, desperately trying to set up that classic knee shot into a melee roundhouse just to save 2 pistol bullets. The pacing is absolutely ruthless, dragging you through suffocating tension, chaotic sieges, and clever puzzles without ever dragging its feet. This is the absolute gold standard for rebuilding a masterpiece. We all remember the absolute emotional damage the first Hollow Knight dealt us, that cute little bug game that somehow made grown adults rage quit and weep at the same time. Well, the wait for Silksong is finally over, and honestly, it was worth every single second of the hype. This time around, you're stepping into the needle-sharp boots of Hornet, a warrior princess who's been snatched and dragged down to this massive vertical kingdom called Farloom. Your goal is simple but brutal. You have to fight your way from the very bottom of the world all the way up to the shining citadel at the peak. But Farloom isn't just a backdrop, it's actively trying to delete you in about 50 different ways. The combat here is a complete evolution. It's significantly faster and way more acrobatic than the original. Hornet doesn't just bonk things with a nail. She's a silk-powered ninja, flipping, dashing, and slicing through the air with incredible momentum. The sheer flow of the movement is addictive. Just traversing these levels feels like a reward in itself. And visually, Farloom is a literal masterpiece. We're talking hand-drawn coral forests, sprawling golden cities, and misty fields where every single frame looks like a high-end painting. Team Cherry is a tiny indie outfit, yet they've managed to craft a world with more atmosphere and soul than most billion-dollar studios. The bosses are absolute wall stoppers that will test every reflex you have. I'm not even going to admit how many tries some of these took me. But every death teaches you a telegraph, and every victory makes you feel like an absolute god of gaming. Plus, there's already a free expansion called Sea of Sorrow on the horizon to pack in even more content. This game literally crashed digital storefronts on launch day because the demand was so feral. If that doesn't tell you how special Silksong is, nothing will. It's peak Metroidvania. Square Enix basically took the most sacred cow in gaming history and somehow managed to make it feel brand new without losing that original PlayStation magic. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth picks up right as Cloud and the gang finally escape the suffocating steel sky of Midgar, and the sense of scale when you first step out into the grasslands is just staggering. You're still playing as Cloud Strife, the iconic, spiky-haired mercenary with a buster sword and enough trauma to fuel a reactor, and you're chasing Sephiroth, who remains the ultimate zero-chill antagonist with that absurdly long Masamune. The world design here is a total pivot. It's a massive, sprawling adventure that drags you through lush forests, sun-drenched beaches, and the neon insanity of the Gold Saucer. There is so much side content that it's actually overwhelming, including Queen's Blood, which is a tactical card game so addictive it could honestly be its own standalone release. The combat is where the game really flexes, though. It's this perfect high-speed hybrid of real-time character switching and tactical ATB commands. You're dodging and parrying in real time, then slowing down the clock to chain together these incredible synergy abilities with your party. The character writing is the real soul of the experience. Tifa, Barrett, Aerith, Red 13, Yuffie, they all have completely distinct mechanical identities, and the banter during exploration makes them feel like a real found family. Square Enix took some massive narrative risks here that will definitely have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the 1997 plot. It's a beautiful, massive, and deeply emotional journey that will absolutely hijack your life for 100 hours. Clear your calendar, because once you start this, you aren't coming back for weeks. Hideo Kojima basically operates on a completely different plane of existence than the rest of the industry, and Death Stranding 2 is the ultimate proof of that. It is part high-stakes logistics simulator, part existential thriller, and part total fever dream. You're back in the boots of Sam Porter Bridges, and the stakes for re-establishing the chiral network have only gotten weirder and more dangerous. The world is still absolutely broken. Timefall Rain is still aging everything it touches in seconds, and those spectral BTs are still lurking in the atmosphere. But the sheer scale of the environmental hazards has been cranked to 11. Every single delivery is a mechanical puzzle that tests your physics-based traversal. You aren't just holding forward on the stick, you're managing Sam's center of gravity across jagged rock faces, building elaborate zipline networks, and now navigating through massive real-time disasters like sandstorms and forest fires. The terrain itself is the primary antagonist, and there is this strangely meditative, deeply satisfying loop to finally cresting a mountain and seeing the destination in the distance. But the social strand system is still the real magic here. You'll be trudging through a brutal snowstorm, completely exhausted, and suddenly you'll find a generator or a bridge left behind by another actual player. You never see them, but you're constantly benefiting from their infrastructure, and they're benefiting from yours. It creates this profound sense of global cooperation that no other franchise has ever managed to replicate. Between the Hollywood-tier cinematics, the unhinged plot twists, and a villain that is genuinely unsettling, it's a total sensory overload. It's definitely not a game for everyone, but if you're looking for a singular, unforgettable experience that refuses to follow the rules, this is it. I get it, the launch was a total disaster. Glitches, crashes, it was a mess. But you need to clear your head because the version of Cyberpunk 2077 running on PS5 right now is a completely different beast. CD Projekt Red basically performed open heart surgery on this game, and with the Phantom Liberty expansion, it's easily one of the most immersive RPGs ever made. You're V, a mercenary in Night City, this neon-soaked hyper-capitalist nightmare where everyone is more chrome than flesh, and trust is the only thing you can't buy. The narrative hook is still wild, with Keanu Reeves as the digital ghost of Johnny Silverhand stuck in your brain, but Phantom Liberty adds Idris Elba into the mix for a high-stakes spy thriller that feels like James Bond met Blade Runner. The mechanical overhaul to the perks and cyberware is where the game finally shines. Every gun has this incredible punchy weight, and net running is actually viable now. You can be a ghost in the machine, short-circuiting enemies' cybernetics without ever pulling a trigger. Or you can go full solo, installing Sandavist and slow-mo tech to slice through a room of guards before they even blink. You can even get literal rocket launchers built into your forearms. Night City itself is the real star here. The verticality and density are just unmatched in the open world genre. You'll be riding a motorcycle through Japantown at night with the rain reflecting off the asphalt, and it looks better than most pre-rendered movies. But it's the writing and the side content that really sticks with you. These aren't just fetch quests, they're grim, heartbreaking, and sometimes hilarious stories that have more soul than most full-price games. It is officially the greatest comeback in gaming history. If you've been holding a grudge since 2020, it's time to let it go and get chipped in. Returnal is essentially the answer to a question nobody actually asked. What if Groundhog Day was a hyper-violent psychological alien nightmare? You're playing as Celine, an Astra Scout who crash lands on this shifting, hostile planet called Atropos, and the hook is brutal. Every single time you die, you wake up right back at the wreckage of your ship. The planet reshuffles, the biomes change, the enemy placements swap. It's a pure roguelike loop where failure is the only way to progress. You are going to get sent back to the start constantly, sometimes in ways that feel totally unfair, but that's the point. You get a little faster, your muscle memory sharpens, and you start to master the rhythmic bullet hell chaos. The combat here is absolutely elite tier. Celine moves with this incredible liquid-smooth agility, and you're constantly dashing through these beautiful but deadly neon orbs of alien energy. The weapon design is some of the most creative sci-fi work I've ever seen. One run, you've got a base carbine, the next, you're firing a hollow seeker that spawns literal portals to shoot enemies for you. And this was the first game to truly show off what the DualSense can do. You can physically feel the haptic pitter-patter of rain on Celine's suit, and the adaptive triggers have this genius half-pull mechanism for alt-fire that feels incredibly tactile. But the real reason you keep going is the mystery. Why is there a 20th century suburban house in the middle of an alien jungle? Who is Celine really? The story drips out in these chilling, cryptic audio logs and first-person sequences that genuinely get under your skin. It's a punishing, beautiful, and completely atmospheric experience that makes full use of the PS5's SSD for instant restarts. It is the definition of just one more run, until you realize it's 4 a.m. Returnal is tough as nails, but it is an absolute technical masterpiece.